Hi there and welcome to the Getting Started guide for CADvanced. So what we're going to be doing today is just having a tour through the system, looking at the various parts of it, and I'll be giving you a guide on how to get your CAD set up. So what we're starting with here is a CAD exactly as you'll get it. This is straight out of the box and has had nothing done to it. So the very first thing we do is to sign in. So the first person who signs in is given administrator rights. So it's very important that you don't share the URL of your CAD until after you've signed in. So we'll do that now. And signing in is done just through Steam, just as you would with any other Steam connected website. And now we're in. So the very first thing we need to do is to go into the admin and take a look through there and then start setting some things up. So if we go to the menu up here and to the admin. So we've got various menus across the top. We'll start at the left and work our way across. So under define values, this is where you define the various values that will be available to people as they create calls, create citizens, create officers, that kind of thing. So you can have like control lists of values that people can choose. So if we're going to calls first, so these are all values that relate to calls themselves. So call grades. Now what I'll just do is I'll just enter any old values here. Obviously the values that you enter will very much depend on your community. So if I just enter some values here. With any of these menus you can edit and delete values using these two buttons here. So this one you just edit and then save and it updates, and similarly with delete, if you just click that, it deletes. So that's how you can manipulate values within these admin screens. So call types, so I'm in the UK, so I might have 999 call and 101 maybe. Incident types, this can be anything, so we could have like a theft maybe, or arson, or even a murder. So that's the call values. So if we move on to the next menu, which is units, so this is where you define your unit type. So a unit type could maybe be a traffic unit, or a dog unit, or a terrorism unit perhaps. And unit states, so what you define here is you'll obviously set the unit state, and that will determine the display in the CAD. So if we have maybe an active state, and the color you choose will also be displayed in the CAD. So have a green one there, we'll have maybe inactive. So yeah, a couple of states there. Next, citizens. So this is where you define the various values relating to citizens. So as users create their citizens, these are the values that they have available to them. So ethnicities, this could be anything, maybe Asian, white, Caucasian, Arabic, I don't know, anything. Genders same, male, female, other. Vehicle models, so maybe Ford Fiesta, I'm in the UK, that's quite a common car, and maybe a Vauxhall Astra. Weapon types, so perhaps a shotgun, pistol. And weapon status, so whether the weapon is a legal weapon, legal weapon, or maybe stolen, that kind of thing. So we move along to the next one. So this is where we define various values for relating to the legal aspects of the CAD. So insurance statuses, so you could have an insurance status of perhaps it's an active, and maybe it's expired, or maybe it's a forgery. Similarly with license statuses, so we'll do the same here. License types, so you might have a vehicle license, you might have a firearms license, And charges. So when you're adding arrests and so on to citizens, you might want to specify what they're being charged with. So you might have maybe theft, arson again, that kind of thing. So that's where you can define all your charges. And we'll see how all these values are used shortly. So that's legal values. And officers, finally, because officers have ranks, this is where you would define them. So you might have a constable, you might have a sergeant, and maybe a superintendent. And because ranks are obviously hierarchical, you can reorder them just using these arrows here. So that's the defining the values. Next we'll move on to manage citizens, which is going to be a very boring screen because we don't actually have any citizens defined currently. So what the purpose of this screen is so that if you've got correct permissions, you can go in and you can manage other people's citizens. So this might be where if you're an officer, you might go in and add arrests or charges to citizens. So you'll see shortly, once we start creating some citizens, they'll then appear here. User management, this is where you manage the users of the CAD. And we've got various permissions assignable for each user, and obviously I'm the only person in this CAD, so there's just me. So I'll just quickly take you through the various permissions. These are all detailed in the user manual, so if you want more details, then have a look there. So dispatcher is whether they can access the dispatch screen within the CAD, which we'll come to shortly. Manage all citizens, that's this screen that we just were on for managing all user citizens. If this is selected, then a user can do that. Manage call values, well, that's whether you can access this menu here for defining call values. Similarly, legal values and officer values. Manage own citizens criminal record, that's one so that you can control whether users can control their own citizens criminal records. So if a citizen has accumulated various charges or arrests or whatever, this controls whether they can manipulate those or not. Manage preferences, controls access to this preferences admin menu, which we'll come to in a moment. Manage unit values, we're back over here, so that's this units screen that we saw earlier. Manage users, well, that's whether you can access this screen that we're currently on. That's grayed out because I never want to be able to take that permission away from myself. Otherwise I'd never be able to give it back to myself, so that's why you're never able to deselect that from yourself. Player, this is whether if you're using the optional free 5M plugin, whether you are whitelisting people for access to your server. The plugin has an optional whitelisting feature which you can turn on or off. If you've got that enabled, then only users with the player role here or the player permission will be able to, that is effectively whitelisting players for your 5M server. So that's what that is. Role player citizen, that controls whether they can access the My Citizens page and create citizens for themselves, and the same with officers. The role player's officer here controls access to the My Officers screen. So that's the user management. Preferences, this is where you can specify various options for the CAD. Most notably details of your 5M server. So if you choose to use the free 5M plugin, then you'd select yes here, which will enable the plugin, and then you can specify the IP address and the port of your 5M server, and that will enable the CAD to communicate with your 5M server. And finally on this screen we have the enable user picker. So if the 5M plugin is enabled, then within the CAD you see various markers for players. If you're not using the 5M plugin, then because you're not seeing markers on the map for selecting players, a list of all players is displayed at the bottom. This just enables you to enable that list at the bottom, which some people find easier to use than clicking on the user's markers. Finally, the downloads page. What we have here is a link, permanent link to the 5M resource. for the CAD, and also a link to the user manual, so you'll always find the latest version there. So that's the admin screens. The next screen would be for defining citizens. So you can see I haven't got any defined now, so let's add one. So you do that by clicking the plus down here, and you start filling in the various properties for your citizens. So let's Joe, be really original, Joe Blogs. He's a male, he's Asian, his weight is 73 kilos, his height is 5 foot 11 inches, his hair is brown, his eyes are brown, and his address is 121 Fake Street, and the postal code is SL34DOG, and his date of birth is the 1st of the 1st 2000. So then that's defined the details. Let's move on to his vehicles. So he has a vehicle with a license plate of that. It's a Ford Fiesta, it's red, and it has active insurance. So we'll just define one more, and that is a Vauxhall Astra, blue, and the insurance on that has expired. So let's move on next to weapons. So he has a shotgun that is legal, but he also has a pistol that is stolen. Next we'll move on to licenses. So he has a vehicle license that is active, but his firearms license is a forgery. And warrants, this is where this probably isn't used so much in the creation of a citizen, but as you'll see in a moment when we go back to the manage all citizens page, if a citizen was having a warrant created for them or on them, then this is where you'd add the details for that, so I'll just skip over that for now. And at the moment obviously they don't have a criminal record, so we won't bother adding that just now. And at this point I'll just show you about characters. So when you create citizens and officers, you can have an active character at any one time. That can be either a citizen or an officer, and you select that by choosing this. So when I select that, you can see at the top here, it's showing my active character as a citizen called Joe Blogs. So that's the citizen creation. If we move on to the officer creation, that works in a very similar way, except there's a lot less detail. It's literally just a name. So if we have Sam Fredericks and save him, so he's our one and only officer. Let's create another. Let's call him Bill James. Save. So you can see we've got two officers, and I've decided I don't want to be Joe Blogs anymore. I want to be Sam Fredericks, so I choose him, and now you can see my active character is an officer called Sam Fredericks. So if we now briefly go back to the admin screen and then manage citizens, you can see the citizen I defined a short while ago, Joe Blogs, is listed here. So imagine that Joe Blogs is in game and he's just committed a crime. We can then move on and add an offence for him. So what we can do here is we say the date. So let's say the 3rd of the 4th 2019. The time is 2030 and the location is Wild Street. So we save that, and at that point we can now add some more details. So we have the choice of adding an arrest, adding some charges, or adding a ticket. I'm going to do all three, although it wouldn't make much sense in the real game, but just to show you. So we get the date and the time filled in, we choose an arresting officer, in this case it will be Bill James, and we select some charges. So this is from the list that we defined in the admin, so theft, and then we save that, and we can see that's now been added. If we weren't actually creating an arrest, and we were just adding charges, we would do that in the middle box there, but I'll just do it here now. And then finally we want to add a ticket, So it gives us the location, date and time. So say 3 points, fine of £50, and some notes, and an issuing officer. So we save that, and that ticket and those charges and arrests are now on that citizen's criminal record. So that shows us how we can add a criminal record to a citizen. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the dispatcher screen and see about creating calls and units. So as you can see here, my icon is appearing on the screen, and this is what I was talking about with the 5M plugin. So if you're using the 5M plugin, you'll see your location on the screen here. If you're not, or if you choose to have it in addition to the marker on the screen, you can select users down at the bottom here, or players down at the bottom here. So the first thing we'll do is we'll create a unit. So we'll give this a name. Okay, and it's a traffic unit and it has an active status. So you can see that appears here. CADvanced is a multi-user system, so any changes you make in a screen, they'll be reflected for all other users of the CAD at that time. And we'll create a call. So the caller information is Steve. No, we've used that. We can't use Fredericks again. Let's use Steve Pleasant. Grade 1 call. Call type is 999. Call description: he's lost his keys. You can enter one or more descriptions, so if you get like initial information, you can add it to the call description, and then as more information on the call comes in, you can add more descriptions there. Call incidents, so it's we don't really have a suitable incident for this, so let's just call it a theft maybe. And locations, we have all the locations that are in the GTA map here. So if I do ED, you would get a suggested list. So maybe Red Desert Avenue is the location for this call. So there's our call. It's been created. So what we need to do next is assign our player to a unit. So we'll assign them to Alpha Bravo, given that that's our only unit at the moment, as a constable. So you can see here my player is now assigned to that unit. One thing you can do with calls is you can add a location marker. So if I place a location marker now for that call, wherever that might be, that's shown on the CAD map here, but also if you're using the 5M plugin, it'll be displayed in game for any users who are assigned to that call. So you can see that on the mini map and on the main map. So if I then assign the Alpha Bravo unit to this new call here, you can see that shown over here. And in game again, if you're using the 5M plugin, users who are assigned to that unit will be notified that they've got a call. So that's the main parts of the CAD screen. What we're going to do now is go in game and see how this all relates to players inside the game. So I'll see you there. Okay, so here we are over in game, and so if I want to view the CAD terminal in game, it's a shift and then the right square bracket, the one that's on a QWERTY keyboard that's 2 keys to the right of the P. So it's the right square bracket, so shift and that. So we can see that the terminal then appears, and we can see a summary of our units and their call assignments. So this information is coming directly from the CAD, and as it's changed in the CAD, then it will be changed in here. So I'm looking at the CAD on a separate screen now, and I can see my player's location indicated by their Steam avatar. So if I was to click on their Steam avatar, I then have a manage unit assignments screen, much as you would or much as you did in the demonstration I gave a few moments ago. So if I was to remove my player from the Charlie Foxtrot unit, if I unselect that and then click save, you can see that now changes in the game. And that was accompanied by a notification sound. That's one of the options you can configure in the server.lua file for the 5M resource. You can alter the volume of it from full volume down to completely silence it, so it's up to you whether you want to hear that or not. So say I now wanted to modify the Alpha Bravo unit's call assignments, I would perhaps remove them from the robbery. So if I do that, you can see that's then reflected in the terminal. One thing it's worth noticing at this point is in the mini-map in the bottom left, we're seeing a little marker there. That's the position that was set in the CAD for the call location. So if I go into the menu, the map, we can see if we scroll out, that's over here. And if I click on it, it says it's 999 grade 1 call. So that makes it very easy for players in game to find their way to a call. In fact, I can, because it's just a standard marker, I can select that and set it as a waypoint like that, and I've instantly got directions to get to that call. So that's how changes made in the CAD are reflected in game, and how players in game can very easily see what calls are assigned and how to get to them. And that really is about it. The whole system, as I say, is designed to be as straightforward to use as possible, so hopefully no one will run into any problems. But if you do, then by all means raise a ticket on the support desk, and we'll help you as much as we can. But that's it for now, so thanks very much for watching.